everyone. Welcome to the Horror Ram. I'm Travis Bruce, and today I have a special guest with us. He's an author, and he has a new book out right now through Nightmare Press, and it's called A Soul a Day. I have with us Todd Sullivan. Todd, welcome to the Horror Ram.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hey, how you doing, everyone?
It's a pleasure, you player. Now, tell us a little bit about A Soul a Day.
All right, Solar Day is a horror book. It takes place in Korea, so specifically, because that's where I lived for 14 years. And it's really kind of the third book in a vampire series, but the series is not a sequel, so they kind of stand alone narratives. But yeah, it's a horror book, it's a vampire book, and it takes place in Korea.
Now, for you to be an American and living in Seoul, Korea for 15 years, did it help when came to writing this book and establishing and legitimizing their culture when telling the story?
Definitely so. I didn't actually live in Seoul only. I lived all over Korea, starting on a small island at the southernmost tip of Korea called Jeju Island. And I kind of moved from there to Seoul, from Seoul to Suncheon to Gangnam to Yulha. And so, yeah, I mean, I actually did learn a lot about Korean people and the culture. And that did infuse the book. Even though the book has several foreign characters or Westerners, basically, but the majority of the characters, I would say about 75% of the characters are actually Korean. And so, yeah, I mean, definitely living there, knowing the people, learning the culture, eating the food, have very heavy influence upon the book itself.
Now the Korean culture right now is when it comes to horror, they are big horror fans. I mean, they are putting out amazing movies, indie and big budget horror films. Now, living there, did you see the passion in horror as well?
You know, the funny thing, because I didn't find out until a little bit later that if you're 18 and younger, it's almost like cigarettes. You can actually view horror movies. And a lot of times, people who are 18 and younger don't get, well, they're not supposed to get much horror material. It's kind of off limit for them. But yeah, there is a influence of horror in Korea. It kind of took a nosedive a bit because your audience probably wouldn't know about this because actually Halloween had become extremely big in Korea, and so they were always kind of talking about vampires and zombies and witches and things like that. But then about 2.5, 3 years ago, there was actually this unfortunate accident in Etowan where there was a crush of people where maybe 120 people died. And so it kind of became less popular. And so it's not talked about as, like, it's not openly, like, horror elements are not as openly talked about as it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Before then, there was like a major, amongst adults, a major influence of horror upon, the themes that you saw in Korea about 2 or 3 years ago.
Now, as an author, is it hard to write a series? Because when you write a standalone, you're tying everything up, a beginning, middle, and you're tying everything up. With a series, you have to leave something for the next chapter or the next book. Was that a struggle for you, or was that pretty easy?
No, because what I did was that when I wrote Butchers, like I had, let's say, about 4 or 5 central characters. I just listened to what people said, what the people who reviewed the book and saw the book said, and they thought that there was one character in particular, Harry, who stood out amongst the others because in the beginning, the main character was supposed to be the central character was supposed to be someone else, but they thought Harry was a standout character, and so book two, it was mostly about her actually. More or less, it's more or less her story. And so what I did was that every time I wrote a book, I just listened to what people said, and I did more what they were kind of interested in. And so Harry features also in book three. It's just not as big as in book three, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't that difficult. I just listened to what people said, and then I kind of uh, kind of shaped the writing in order to what I thought would have the best, most positive effect from people reading it.
Now, does negative feedback help you as an author?
Does what feedback?
Negative feedback.
It does, yeah. I mean, I'm a huge, huge proponent of critique groups, workshops. Like I have a bachelor of arts in English, with concentration in creative writing and a Master of Fine Arts in creative writing. So I've been in a lot of critique groups, and then after I left my MFA in 2009, I joined a slew of critique groups online. So I wouldn't say it's not particularly negative feedback, but it's constructive feedback has been really helpful. And I'm always trying to, like the way I write, is that the positive elements that the things that people find that they're more engaged in, that's what I've always done more of, and the things that people were less engaged in, I did less of. And I think that's been really helpful in getting more pieces published over the past 12 years.
Love it, man. Because I mean, as an artist or a creator, it is tough. Like you said, constructive criticism. It's tough sometimes to get that because you see your project as your baby, and like even some critiques, you're like, oh boy, I really like that. But it takes, to move to that next level, you have to listen to what your audience says because they're the ones who are reading it.
Right. I mean, it's like, this is like a well-known saying. Is at this point, it's just a well-known cliche that in order to do any kind of art, I think you have to have a really thick skin. But it is very important because it's easy to be pricked when people are like giving you critiques. It's easy to become like kind of upset. You know, you want like this is your important thing, and you want like because you put yourself out there. It's not very often that you go out into the world and then you say what's wrong with me? But that's actually what you do when you write a piece of writing. You're putting it out there and you want to know for critique groups and workshops, you want to know what's wrong with this. And it's very difficult. So you have to have a very thick skin. But in the end, I think it's essential. I think if you really want to write publishable writing, you have to put it out there to small groups and find out what's working and be very honest with yourself when you hear the answers. Just be very honest, and I think it would be really helpful as time goes on with your writing career.
And that's something, I mean, even like that, even as a YouTube creator, it was something that was something tough even for me. But like, I look at the comments. I look at the comments often, and most people know I look at the comments because I always reply back and to everyone. And like, but like, yes, you sometimes you have to listen to what your audience says, and because I mean, they're the ones, they're your fans, they're your audience, so they're giving you what they want to see, what they want to hear. So that's always important.
Right. I mean, I was just going to quickly say, definitely as a content creator, it's almost essential. I mean, if
Mhm.
you're not doing more what gets more views, more likes, more attention, then you're just not really being seen. So as a content creator, it is really essential to know what your audience is enjoying and then do more of that.
I agree. I agree. Now, you are your book is being released by Nightmare Press. By the way, love those guys over there. As when it comes to a lot of new indie authors, they have to decide if they're going the self-published route or go to a smaller press. What was that like for you, and what made you be like, you know what, I want to go with Nightmare Press? That seems like the right press for me.
So what made me go to the traditional publishing route instead of the self-publishing route is that in 2002, 2003, I actually did self-publish. I self-published a collection of short stories, poems, and novella called One Hour, and I did promotion for it. And what I realized is that it's always better. I think it's usually always better to do things as a team because you have people who are there to support you, there to give you ideas. And I think that with Nightmare Press, Jacob has actually been extremely supportive. He's been really amazingly supportive of my writing. He talks about my writing in social media and how much he enjoys it and how much he feels that people should read it. And so he is an indie publisher, but he's very attentive and he's very encouraging. And I think that that's really important. I mean, if you publish with any kind of publisher, as long as not as long as, but what's really important is that they actually like your writing. I mean, that's like if you feel that the person who published you enjoys the thing that you wrote, I mean, there's almost nothing better than that. So that's one of the reasons why I chose Nightmare Press. And it's been, this is the third book, and the fourth one should be coming out. Right now, the date is undetermined, but this is the third one. So I'm really I'm really appreciative to Jacob for like believing in my writing.
And it's great to have, someone like Jacob and Nightmare Press, or there's several small presses that, because you had that nice marketing machine behind you, because as a writer, you want to focus on writing. You don't want to focus on necessarily the marketing, the press outlet. We can reach out to podcasters, and to have a small press that's doing the right job, they are doing those pieces for you behind the scenes, which is great.
Right, and that's the thing that I learned at this self-publish. I mean, back then it was only me, and it's always better to have someone else, well, as well as you, but someone else also working to get your work out there. I mean, it's just you can double, triple, quadruple your audience if you have someone else helping you. So, I mean, I personally think that it's a very uh, efficient and effective way to go, traditional publishing.
Now, as an indie horror author, are you worried about the increase in AI generated indie writing that's coming out?
Worry about like I worry about a tornado coming or a hurricane or earthquake. I mean, it's like it's one of these things that whether or not you worry about it doesn't really matter because it's gonna come and you have to deal with it. So, do I worry about it? No, I mean it's just gonna crowd the field anymore. But the field after Amazon, after because when I first self-published, Amazon really wasn't a thing, and so back when I was promoting myself, it was much fewer writers out there was competing with. And AI, it just makes it even more competitive. But I don't really know if it's going to do more damage or worse damage. I mean, anyway, I can't do anything about it. So I guess I'm not overly worried about it. No.
So I'm assuming you've always been a horror fan, or is it something that you kind of fell into over time?
What it is that I had an older sister who was really into horror, and she was like 4 years, 5 years older than me. And I grew up in the '80s before they had of course, before the internet and before there were all these channels. And so your older siblings were the one with the remote control, and she
Yes.
really liked horror. And so, I ended up watching a lot of horror back then. And honestly, it used to really scare me. But it did create an appreciation watching things like Poltergeist and Freddy Krueger, like the earlier ones, Jason and things like that. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Like my family saw all those old movies that came out in the '80s and the '90s, and yeah, I mean, it definitely had an impact upon me. But I think more than anything, I just discovered as I started writing at a young age that people enjoy the horror, and like I was saying before, I try to do more with works and less with doesn't work, and because people were enjoying my horror writing, that's what it's not the only thing that I do, but that's what I do a lot of. I do a lot of horror-ish fiction or just darker type narratives.
Is it hard? I can imagine right now. I mean, because you were talking about there's a huge influx of indie horror creators, whether it be filmmakers, YouTube, or even authors. It's a because it's more accessible to do now. What are some things that you do in like when you're writing a book? Do you do research what is already out in the market before you start writing a book, or do you just say, fuck it? I got this idea in my brain. I don't care if it's already out there a billion times, but this is my vision. This is my version of it.
I don't do research. I will admit that I don't do research into the horror market. And really, I just assume, and I think I've been right so far, that because of my experiences and background are so unique. Like I'm from New Orleans. I lived in Atlanta. I lived in Korea for 14 years, Taiwan for 2 years. I lived in Japan for about maybe 2 months. And so when you combine all these weird things about my background and then you put it into a book, I think it's unique anyway. And so I don't think I don't really do a research because I don't think I could really emulate what's out there. It has to be me. And that's what I produce. I produce my own experiences on the page in the form of horror. And that's what I do.
By the way, I've lived and been all across the world as well. What was your experience? I've been throughout Asia. What was your experience with but living in an Asian country as a Black American man?
It's a lot of challenges. Like I always think to myself when this question is asked, that I don't want to like complain because I was there for 3 or 14 years, Taiwan for two. Though Taiwan it was the two COVID years, the pandemic, so that was difficult. But definitely a lot of challenges there. But I think the challenges of living in Asia made me a significantly stronger person, like from when before I went to after I came back 16 years later. And that I do appreciate. I appreciate the fact that I became just much uh, like in Asia, I existed on my toes the whole time. I was always on my toes because you have to pay attention a lot as a foreigner, as a black foreigner in these countries, and so it made me really hyper aware of things, and just very anyway, very aware. And so that's what I appreciate my 16 years in Asia. It was challenging. It was an adventure of itself. But in the end, I came out, I think, significantly better than I was before I went in there. So I thank Asia for giving me that.
Yes. And I think Africa for forgive me that too, because I've been out there Asia, but I lived in Africa for 2.5, 3 years. And I was like, holy crap. And I agree with you. Like, even though I'm black, I stand out like a sore thumb in Africa because I don't have the features. I don't have, the dark skin. And like, I don't talk or don't dress. They don't have face hair. And like, I was an outsider and I stood out and I was hyper alert because I didn't want to ever be seen as a victim or anything. You know what I mean? So you just have to be aware when you're in foreign places and you stand out like that. You have to know your surroundings pretty well.
You do. And then in Asia, you are constantly being stared at. So you're under the microscope the whole time. And so things like this make you, again, just mentally a high level of mental fortitude because it takes a lot of mental fortitude to be, like most of the time, I think people don't want to be the center of attention, but you can't really help that when you're in Asia. And so it creates a lot of mental discipline in order to get by, especially after so long.
By the way, have you ever thought about making a horror book about that?
Well, I'm writing a memoir. So I'm writing a memoir about my experiences, my 16 years in Asia.
Hmm.
But again, I think that anyway, I think that those experiences like that are going to work better into in the memoir, which is more direct, me speaking to the reader, him or herself. Maybe one day I may try to think of some type of horror about it. Yeah.
Now, I come up with a lot of like I've never made a horror movie, but I come up with great ideas and I pass them on to other filmmakers. And my most of my ideas come from dreams. Have any of your stories ever came from a dream that you had that was a vivid one, and then like it was bits and pieces, and you just added to it?
I don't know if a dream, but I have had maybe two or three pieces that I wrote in one setting. So, like, I just had this idea that kind of stuck with me, and I just started writing it down. And it just more or less what I wrote down with almost no editing is what was eventually picked up for publication. So it wasn't exactly a dream, but I do think, unless I was like maybe dreaming while I was awake, I was just so deeply into a thought and then I just put it right down on the page, almost like a stream of conscious type writing. So I have had that happen, but from a dream itself, nothing that comes to mind at this moment. No, nothing that comes to mind at this moment.
Now, Todd, listen, all of your work you can find on Nightmare Press, correct?
No, I have two publishers. I have a fantasy
Oh,
series also. So my fantasy series is from Mocha Memoir Press, which is in, I always forget, North Carolina and South Carolina, but it's one of the Carolinas. But anyway, so I have a fantasy series, which is 3 books right now, and then I have a horror series, which is with Nightmare Press.
love it, man. Listen, Todd, I am looking forward to reading your books. Um, it sounds like something right up my alley. I love foreign horror. I love horror that shows them, in a foreign place with the same horrific stories. So I'm definitely going to look forward to reading the books. And where can everyone find you, Todd?
I'm very active on social media. So I have a YouTube channel. Just search my name, Todd Sullivan. It should be in this thing, so you can see my name there. I have a small digital magazine that I've been running for 5 years, so you can search that. Samjoko magazine. Samjoko is a Korean word. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So yeah, I mean, actually, if you just Google my name, you should be able to find me that way.
Awesome. And if you go down in the description, the link to Todd's YouTube channel is down there. So please like and subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. That definitely helps out. Todd, listen, it was a blast to have you on. I want to thank Jacob from Nightmare Press for aligning this interview.
Right. Thank you. Oh, all right. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yes, listen, everyone, get over to Nightmare Press and check out A Soul a Day and some more of Todd's work. Thank you for coming to another edition of Horror Realm. I'm Travis Bruce. That's my man, Todd Sullivan. We'll see you next time. Take care.